So I want to welcome all you brothers. Thank you so much for logging on this evening. We have a very special guest this evening, Damian Reid. Um, he is a performance and freedom lifestyle mentor and coach, best-selling author, international speaker, and and his list goes on and on. And I'm going to actually let Damian introduce himself. But Damian, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We are looking forward to hearing about balance. There's just so much going on. It should be interesting to have this conversation. So the floor is yours. So we'll turn it over to you, Damian.
Thank you so much, Mike. Before I get started, and I'll pop, Mike, can I share screen?
Yes, I'll make sure that you can.
Okay. Just before I get started, I was noticing a lot of folks talking about areas in New York that I'm familiar with. I'm in Toronto, Mike. Didn't share that. I'm in
That's
Toronto
right.
right now.
Yeah.
But I spent many 4th of July weekends and other holidays in the NYC area. When my family immigrated from Guyana in South America, most of them went to New York City, and then some of them came to Toronto. And so we were always down in the New York City area visiting family, and I have a lot of family that are still there. So New York City is warm and dear to my heart. So it's great to be connected with so many brothers that are in the New York City area. Let me share my screen. So you see that now?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to talk about balance tonight, and I want to start with a question. How many, just raise your hands, we don't have to do the virtual hands thing, but how many people on the call have heard of this concept called work-life balance? Nobody. Mike, why isn't your hand up? You have definitely heard of this concept.
Yes.
I can see y'all, with no hands raised up. Okay. All right. How many of you feel like you have not achieved that ideal balance yet for yourself? Raise your hands. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be talking about this whole notion of balance. And as Mike said, my name is Damian Reid. I run a company called Damian M Reid International, and I've got all these different things that I've done in life, but that is not the relevant thing that I really want to talk to you guys about. I created this 7-step system that I just threw up here on the screen, and the 7-step system is there for people to design and live their ideal lives. And inside of creating the system and inside the content of the best-selling book that I wrote, I take this look at the whole notion of freedom and balance as it relates to this whole world of freedom. So let's talk about why this opportunity to create this balance. Most people raise their hand when I ask, hey, how many people haven't created that? In the US, 33% of employed adults work an average Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. And this has led 66% of full-time employees to say that they don't strongly believe that they have work-life balance. And what's interesting is that only 23% of companies, about 1 in every 5, actually believe that they're promoting work-life balance. So clearly, if the companies aren't out to promote it, it's going to be really hard for the rest of us to actually get it or experience it. And in the world, what we're starting to see now is, more and more people are working longer and longer hours while they're seemingly taking home less pay as a value exchange for their work. When we start to look at, the rise of inflation versus the rise of wages, it's not necessarily a match. And we're also dealing with the fact that the world is experiencing a sleep crisis. In the US, it's such a big public health issue that the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, has called the sleep crisis an epidemic. So here we are spending less time with our loved ones on average. We are having to babysit our young people and teens with technology. And a lot of people are sort of dreaming of finding more hours in the day to spend on the things that we enjoy most. Sometimes we find ourselves feeling embarrassed that maybe there's something we haven't figured out that someone else has discovered on how to get more done in the time that we have. And that was one of the reasons behind me creating that 7-step system that I showed you before. So let me share a couple of things with you from my personal life, just so that you know that I'm talking not from the theoretical, but from having lived some of these lessons myself. I spent most of my career in the corporate world, and I had 2 major burnouts before the age of 30 while I was working for one of the largest telecommunications companies here in Canada. About 9 years ago, I was dealing with untreated major depression disorder. And at the same time, I was grieving the end of a 2-year engagement. And my vitamin D level was the lowest that my doctor, who happened to be 70 years old at the time, said he had ever seen in his history of being a doctor. So I've confronted this idea of balance and what's important to life many, many times. Today, I'm running and growing 6 different companies. I'm actually just recently took on training a service dog full-time. I'm actively dating. I live a digital nomad lifestyle, which means that I'm location independent and can work from anywhere in the world. I'm completing items on my bucket list. I also average more than 7.5 hours of sleep a night. So tonight I'm going to ask you to consider 3 things. Okay. The first thing that I'm going to ask you to consider is the fact that the notion of work-life balance is crap. I don't know how else better to say that without cursing. All right. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask you to consider. Second thing I'm going to ask you to consider is an alternative context. If the notion of work-life balance is actually crap and you actually buy into that, I'll ask you to consider an alternative context to the world of balance. And then finally, I'm going to have a conversation with you around the notion of time. And then once I'm done that, in the remaining time, I'll answer as many questions as I can. Okay. So let's start actually looking at what I call the 12 key life areas. And I defined these when I've written my book. The thing I would say about life areas before I talk about the specific areas is I say 12. Some people have seen like life wheels or different coaches will do, maybe 8, maybe 10. There's no right answer. These are just the ones that I say they are. But the concept itself that I'm going to talk to you about and why it's relevant applies regardless of which set of life areas you call them or how many ever there are. So I say in my model that there's 6 internal areas and 6 external areas. Okay. So the 6 key life areas that are internal are environment, well-being, growth, spirituality, contribution, and self-image. And then the 6 areas that I consider external, so outside of you, are business, wealth, social, family, recreation, and love. Okay? You don't have to remember all those, just for the sake of just understanding that there's 12 of them. Okay, so are you ready for us to like shatter this idea of work-life balance? Yeah? Okay. Are you sure? I see nods. Are you sure? Because I'll tell you why. Because after we have this conversation, you're never likely to say those words again. Okay? And you're going to probably find yourself unable to stop correcting people when they start to talk about work-life balance. So here we go. First thing I promised to share with you is why this notion of work-life balance is crap. Okay, so let's start with the whole notion of a balance. So the definition of a balance from the dictionary is a balance is a weighing device, especially one consisting of a rigid beam horizontally suspended by a low friction support at its center with identical weighing pans hung at either end, one of which holds an unknown weight while the effective weight in the other is increased by known amounts until the beam is level and motionless. Essentially, it's what you're familiar with that stick that hangs horizontally and two pans hanging down from it. That's a balance. When people start talking about work-life balance, that is literally what we're talking about, balancing work and life. So for this exercise, let's take a look at the image that I put up there. Instead of the pans, just consider that we're balancing work on the left-hand side of the screen where there's one rock, and we're going to talk about the other areas of life piled up on the other side for this conversation. Okay, so business, which is work, includes all the activities that you engage in that include your regular occupation, your profession, your time or trade, any attention that you have acquiring knowledge on an academic subject. That's what we consider the business key area of life. Okay. So in other words, anything that you would consider work or learning related to your work or career. So we're going to take that business category and we're going to put it on the left-hand side of that balance of that block. So let me tell you a little story about Guinness Book of World Records. According to the Guinness World Records, the heaviest person in medical history was by the name of John Brower Minnock. In March of 1978, John was admitted to the University Hospital in Seattle. He weighed more than 635 kilos or 1,400 pounds. It took a dozen firemen and an improvised stretcher to move him from his home to a ferry boat. And when he arrived at the hospital, he was put in two beds, lashed together, and it took 13 people just to roll him over. So, got a picture of John, 1,300 pounds. That's the largest person ever. Let's just say we put John right over there where business is. That's one person. Okay. The average human being weighs 137 pounds. How many people on this call weigh more than 137 pounds? Okay, so we're bigger than average. Okay, so I said there were 12 areas of life. If we took 137 pounds and we times that by 11, that would be 1,500 pounds. Is 1,500 bigger than 1,300?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we took 11 areas of life on average and put them on the right-hand side and tried to balance them out against the biggest person that ever existed in the world, 1,500 pounds is still bigger than 1,300 pounds. 11 never balances one. So in other words, let me say that another way. People have this conversation about trying to balance 11 areas of life against one area of life called work. And then they say the other 11 areas of life are all going to balance up against, we're going to measure it off against work. The biggest, heaviest business will never be able to be balanced with the 11 other key life areas. From the notion of work-life balance, you're always looking to see what you can take from one side and add to the other side of the equation to equal each other. How can I pull from work to give more to these 11 other areas? Or what can I drop from one of these 11 areas so I can give more to life? Can you see that that's a no-win scenario from the idea of balance? Can't do it because we're always thinking about what am I going to compromise in order to have something else work. It's a give and take. So if balance is not the answer, because that is the true nature of balance, us trying to give and take, pull from one to the other. If that's not the answer, then what's the answer? So I said I would give you an alternative context to think about. So that was the second thing I promised, right? What could be a context that is an alternative to thinking of work-life balance? So imagine those 6 internal key areas of life that I was talking about. Imagine they were each part of a circle and they were 1/6 of the circle, right? So you can see like a wheel on the bicycle there. Imagine that each one of those areas of life was represented by 1/6, a pie shaped 1/6 of that circle. And imagine that the 6 external areas were also represented as 1/6 of a separate circle. And we're going to take those circles and we're going to make them into the front wheel and back wheel of the bicycle. So you got your back wheel is your internal areas and your front wheel is your external areas. What happens when the pieces of those wheels would be at different levels? Like, let's say the pieces of the pie, one was shorter, one was longer, the next one was shorter, the next one was longer. What would riding that bicycle be like? Anybody?
A wobbly experience.
It would, right? Like it would be like literally the bump, 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 bump. Like it's, there's not a whole lot of smoothness to that bicycle. Now, what would it be like if all of the areas, each piece of those wheels were close to the same levels?
Smoother ride.
It would smooth out, right? So it wouldn't matter whether or not all of those areas were like, say, a 6 out of 10, or they were at 8 out of 10. If they were all approximately the same, then the ride would be smoother. So rather than relate to your life and the 12 key life areas from a context of balance, where you're giving from one and taking from another and trying to swap that out, I'm going to invite you to start to think about it from a new context called equilibrium. So from a place of equilibrium, you have your attention on all of your key life areas. And you're looking to see how you can have things be smoothed out. See if business is operating at around the same level as other areas of your life, things can be smoothed out. Now, here's the thing about 12 key areas of life. Focusing on 12 key life areas at the same time can be overwhelming for even the most self-aware person. Imagine you're trying to like figure out, how am I going to have my love life work? How am I going to have my well-being work? How am I going to have my business work? How am I going to have, like, focusing on all 12 can be challenging. So I designed a tool, and it's called the Freedom Lifestyle 12 Key Life Areas Self-Assessment. I know it's a mouthful, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this with Mike so that he can get it to you after tonight's session. And you guys can go through the self-assessment and just follow the instructions. And what happens is, as you complete the assessment, it identifies which of the 12 key life areas needs your most urgent attention. So in terms of looking at smoothing things out, it'll produce that outcome for you, so that you know that if you've got a certain amount of energy to be able to put into this, then you want to focus on 2 or 3 areas at a time and put your attention on the areas that are most urgent, that will provide you the biggest bang for your buck. And these areas are not always the ones that you feel the most struggle with. And that will be the surprise. I had a client a couple of years ago who was struggling with, she's actually from New York, and she was struggling with her relationship with her family. and she was spending a lot of energy and attention on whether or not she should go to this particular family function. And she did this assessment, and what it showed her was that even though her energy, her attention, and her discomfort and her angst was all operating around this particular area of family, it was not the area that was most important to her. And so she realized that she could just let it go. She was just not going to go to that family function. And the moment she realized that that wasn't the most important thing to her, that wasn't where she needed to put her attention, she had this tremendous amount of peace show up in her life. So you can have an area that you're stressing about, but it may not be the area that you need to put the focus on and attention that'll provide you with the biggest bang for your buck. All right, so that's the alternative context to consider. Aim for equilibrium, not for balance. All right, so the final thing that I promised I was going to share with you was all around the notion of time. All right, this conversation you want to pay attention to, because I'm going to say some stuff that will make your head kind of spin a little bit, I promise, because even when I say it, it makes my head spin. So the biggest challenge for people in achieving equilibrium is their poor relationship to time. And when I say time, I'm not speaking about the 24 hours in a day. I'm speaking about the time that is gone. So I'm talking about the past. I'm talking about the time that has not yet arrived. In other words, the time called the future. And I'm also talking about the time that you exist in right now. So your state of equilibrium, that whole notion of having equilibrium in the 12 key life areas, is a current phenomenon. It's happening right now. Your equilibrium happens now. Your lack of equilibrium happens now. So what happened last month, last week, yesterday, before you got here, 5 seconds ago, is not and does not have to be a predictor of what is happening right now. So if I was to stand up from my desk and I was to stand on my head right now on camera, there would have been no indication before now that that would happen. You would be like, what is going on? Damian is standing on his head. Okay. And yet, even as you sit in your chairs right now listening to me, your brain's predictive survival mechanism is anticipating what I will say. It's anticipating what's going to happen on the screen. It's anticipating what's going on in the environment around you. Now, that mechanism that I'm talking about is a really good mechanism because it's designed to keep you alive, basically to survive. It has nothing to do with living a fulfilling and thriving life in all 12 key life areas. So right about now, I know most people have a thought that says, okay, well, what about the future time then? Okay, so if you don't have equilibrium right now, then what there is for you to do is to achieve it tomorrow or next week or next month, or if your life is really bad, by sometime next year. That's mostly what people think. We could spend an entire other Real Dads Network evening talking about the way in which your brain is designed to be a poor predictor of the future, because it is also not a good predictor of the future. It's a poor predictor of the future because it uses your survival data. It uses experiences and it uses your memories from the past to predict the future. So let me summarize all of everything that I just said by saying this. You're not living in the future. You're living right now in the present time, and it's the only time you have any control over. Your past is already gone, and your future is at best a likely prediction subject to many unknowns. And you get to choose in this moment right now what you'll do to create equilibrium. You don't get to choose about it in the past, and you definitely don't get to choose about it in the future because you're not sure about what's going to happen in the future. So for some of you, it might be walking upstairs on your way home instead of riding the elevator right now. It could be speaking up at this event and asking a question right now, or being known and heard in this group right now. It could be unshielding your heart before you decide to go to bed and creating an opening for love in the moment. So I want you to ask yourself, what's one action that I can take right now in the present to bring myself into a world of equilibrium? It might even be choosing to adopt the diet of eating right for your blood type right now. So I want you to write down what that action is now, somewhere where you know you will actually act on it. I'll just give you guys like 30 seconds to do that. Actually, I'll leave that slide up just in case you want to be in touch. Okay, and then while you're doing that, now's a good time for me to take some questions. And if you guys want to be, if anybody wants to be in touch with me in any way, I put my email and social media up on the slide. This is where we'll start taking some questions. I'll take that down in a few minutes, just so that I can be with you fully. But who's got questions about anything I just said?
Okay, Noah has his hand up. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
How you brothers doing?
Doing
Awesome.
great. Good to see you. We can't hear you, Noah.
You just cut out. It's frozen at my end.
While Noah is getting his thoughts together, anyone else who'd like to go have a question for Damian, what he's covered? Damian, that was great. That was a lot of good information.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No, I think we can.
Noah,
now, you're
all right.
cutting
do we
in
have
and
you
out.
back?
There
Am I
you are.
back? Y'all hear
Yeah,
me?
you're back.
All right. So when I hear that, I think about history repeats itself. So you think about the past. So that kind of makes you go to war with what's happening in the present, right? So
Yeah.
what are some tools to kind of think about? Because what I think too, I like what you said about equilibrium. Your daily life is a negotiation of a bunch of you going forward, right? It's like this unilateral, almost multi-dimensional thing that you go through. Like you could go this way, you go this way, you go this way.
Yeah.
But what makes you think about it is, man, I'm doomed. What do they call it? It's cliche. You're doomed to repeat the past, right? So how do you kind of reconcile, and what are some strategies you use to kind of get off of that and then live in the present?
So the first thing to recognize about all those cliches about you're doomed to repeat the past, etc., is that is 100% tied to you living from that state of survival and having your brain just operate based on the past as opposed to creating something in this moment in the present. So I don't agree with you're doomed to repeat the past or that you're going to live it over or it's predictable. The reality of it is, as you said, I love the way you said that we're kind of in this multi-dimensional space. If we make a choice, do you remember when you were little, did you ever have those books where you could like read the book and you get to choose?
Choose your own adventures. Yeah.
Right. So I read, I make a choice, I go this way, I get a different ending. I can read it this way, I choose, I get a different ending. Our life is exactly the same. In every single moment, we get to make an unlimited amount of choices. And if we make choices based only on things that are coming from our past, then yes, you'll absolutely be doomed to repeat it because you're making the same choices. So in terms of mechanisms, now that's where it starts to become a practice. So the first thing that there is to do is be aware of the fact that you're making those choices. I know Mike and I were in a group, a different group a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about this very topic about awareness and how we make different choices. So the first thing you've got to do is become aware, and then you have to have a practice that has you choose a different path. Sometimes it's not just as easy as saying you're going to do it. Sometimes you need to engage with a coach or a mentor or somebody else who's going to have you see that you're making the same choices over and over again, so they can give you a different perspective to make different choices. So I think I don't want to say there's, I don't want to focus on one specific practice, but rather than saying the choice is to engage in a practice to make different choices, and that can be any number of different practices. Does that make sense, Noah?
Absolutely. I mean, then just hearing the coaching, that's something I heard from my past, that I can take that part and then make it my present. Because I mean, everybody who I know is successful always say you got to get you some coaching, you got to get you a mentor.
Yeah.
So yeah, that does make sense. Appreciate it.
Yeah, at one time in my life, I don't have them all now, but the most number of coaches I was ever working with simultaneously was 5. I had somebody working with me on my relation, like dating. I had someone working with me to train for a triathlon. I had someone working with me to eat properly, which is why I appreciate what Jerome was saying earlier. I had someone working with me on my business. And I don't remember what the 5th one was, but it was 5, like, and each was in an area that I was committed to producing a result. Now, I recognize that not everybody is going to be able to like have the financial means to hire a bunch of coaches, but that doesn't mean that you can't get mentorship or help or a accountability buddy or a partner or something that actually gets you outside of your own head.
Damian, would you also consider journaling as a tool so that you could look back and see, you know, as you journal, you could journal your goals, my
Yep.
actions, the actions I want to take, so you're just not in your head?
Yes, journaling is a really powerful tool. It's a super powerful tool. My daughter and I both use this particular journal that I find really interesting. It's not very long. This is one of the journals we use, but it's a journal that goes over 5 years, and it's got a couple of lines per day. And what's really interesting is you write, and then so 1 year lives on top of the next year. So a year later, you're writing underneath what you wrote on the same day in the year before, and 2 years later, you're writing what you wrote. You see the 2 things from 2 years. By the time you get to 5 years, you're looking back over your thoughts for 4 years, and you get to see like, oh man, I'm writing about the same thing. Like, it's been years, and I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to actually adjust this. I'm going to do something different about this. Or the opposite of that is you're like, wow, I can't believe I was having these thoughts like a year ago. I'm so much further ahead than I was then. I like that because it really gives you a chance to see your growth or not. But I also use a longer journal where I'm just like journaling out thoughts, getting things out of my head. I endorse the journal practice before going to bed at night, so you can sleep with all the stuff out of your head
And wake up with new energy, a new perspective.
100%.
Ishmael, please.
Ishmael, yeah.
Again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Quick question. How does imposter syndrome play a role in that false ideology of balance?
Imposter syndrome is a really interesting thing. First of all, the thing to get about imposter syndrome is it's not real, right? So if you recognize that you're dealing with imposter syndrome, then the first thought you could have is, my brain is currently telling me something that is 100% not real. Now I have a choice. I can listen to it or not. And you could take action and still have that voice in your head telling you all that nonsense. It doesn't have to be the thing that stops you from taking action. Right? So how does it play into the whole notion of balance and equilibrium? Well, I have yet to meet, and you got to hear what I'm about to say. Like, I've worked with thousands of people. I've yet to meet someone whose dreams are bigger than something they can achieve. I actually do not believe that as human beings, we dream bigger than we can achieve. So if you have something telling you that you can't have it, it's not real. It's just a voice telling you that you can't have what you're dreaming about. I'd love someone to show me that human being that has, I've never seen it. Most of us don't run around dreaming like, I wish I could, I dream I sprout wings and fly off the top of a building. We don't dream that.
Hopefully not.
Maybe when we're asleep, we might dream that. That's a different kind of dream. But I mean lucid waking desire dreams. We don't create things that we can't achieve. So anything that's standing in the way of you achieving that in terms of equilibrium, or standing in the way of you achieving that, if the voice is an imposter syndrome, it's not telling you the truth. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, great.
So
Yes,
Damian,
Mike.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As a man of color, in the environment that we have to work in the society we have to work in, there are certain demands that's on us, or that's real.
Yeah.
I think of the economy, that the world that we're living in order to survive economically. So someone comes and say, oh yeah, so you have this wonderful will and you do this, this wonderful balance of everything.
Mhm.
And I can remember when I was working, I sometimes had to put some things on hold because I knew I had to show up,
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was stressful.
Yeah, it is. It can be. I don't live in Disney World. Like it's all fairy tales and princesses. I think Mike, the real life outside of us environment situation, especially as it plays into being a man of color, and the additional demands or challenges that we face, is definitely something that we have to consider. And I don't ever endorse having a brother lower his perspective, his outcome, his desires, because of he is in that situation and it's more challenging. And like you said, there may be some times where, when we're choosing what key life area to go to work on, like I said, you can't work on all 12 at the same time. So when you're choosing what you're going to go to work on, it may be that, the work aspect might have to be one of those 3 areas that you're working on. And the other 2 would be the next 2 important ones. And 9 of them, in essence, have to be on hold because you can't do it all at once. So I'm not advocating for people to think they can take it all at once, but I do think it's important to understand which area is going to give you that biggest hit, so to speak, to round out and create that equilibrium. Right? Like if I'll pick an area that, wants something for me. When I did that a couple of quarters ago, I do that assessment once a quarter. And then over the next 3 months, I focus on those 3 areas, and then I do it again. A couple of quarters ago, I recognized that the area of contribution was missing for me. Like, it was low. It was important for me to give back to the world, but I wasn't taking any action in it. And it was like there was like a hole that was empty that wasn't being fulfilled. And so I took on in that quarter to take actions. And now I volunteer with an organization called Access here in Toronto. and I lead small business accelerator programs for newcomers, women and men. And I also sit on their loan review committee to give loans to small business owners who get refused at the bank. So that became a way of me giving back to the community. And now that area has much more fulfillment. So now I can move on to another area, and I'm not feeling that hole anymore. Right. So piece by piece by piece, bringing it into equilibrium.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said. Noah.
Yeah. All right. So all of us are pretty much 40 and up, black men 40 and up. You know, they say that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So what are the like typical things that you see black men like us with a challenge to trying to achieve equilibrium and, you know, trying to get out of our old ways? You know, I like the journaling, but like what are the typical things that you see black men 40 and up and trying to achieve this?
Noah, you love your cliches. I'll tell you, those cliches are all like,
yeah, they mean something, man. You know, yeah, they mean something.
So I'm 55 years old. All right. I spent this past weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, in a course teaching myself new tricks. So I don't buy that. I think that we are human beings we are infinite. God created us as infinite in his image, and there is nothing that we can't create to fulfill on. So I don't buy into I can't learn more. I can't get out of my habits. I think here's what I will say about teaching old dogs new tricks. I think the older we get, the more set we get in our ways. And so it takes something for us to be willing to open ourselves to learn. But that's just a matter of willingness, not a matter of ability.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that. I think the older we get, the more intentional we have to be and more committed. But
yeah,
those cliches was to keep us down. we gotta wash them out. We gotta wash them out. Yeah. Those cliches was to keep us down. But I totally agree with what Damian's saying. We're limitless at any age. It's amazing what I see people going back in their 70s to get their doctorate. And I'm like, what? And I mean, you have endless stories of people, the older they're getting, the things that they're doing. And what I'm realizing more and more, they were very intentional. They were passionate. They were relentless. You know, like this is going to happen. Even if every morning they woke up and say, I'm going to do this. Whether it was support, whether it's who they associated with, but whatever they had to do to accomplish it, their mind was set to do it. So I think as we get older, we have to be a bit more intentional, but it can be done. Yeah.
I still want to compete in an Ironman, and I haven't. You know, I've never competed in an Ironman, and I still want to do that. So, you know, that'll take something on my part. That's a lot of new tricks I'm going to have to learn because I'm not that great a swimmer, and I can't run a marathon at the moment. And I don't know about biking that kind of 100 miles. You got to bike 100 miles and then run a marathon and then swim something like 3 miles or something. It's crazy. But I'm still committed to doing that. Yeah, Jerome.
Yeah, I gotta. I'm sorry.
We have two Jeromes.
Oh, Jerome with his hand up.
Jerome Taylor.
Jerome Taylor. Well, you're muted, Jerome. There you go. Now you're muted again. There you go. Now you're muted again.
60 plus. You're muted, Jerome. You're muted.
You're muted. There. Don't touch
Okay.
it. Right there.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway.
Okay. I didn't know what Jerome. It was me or Brother Taylor. I didn't know what Jerome he
Brother
had
Taylor.
at first. Yeah. But my question.
We the Bobsey twins.
Yeah.
Jerome,
Right.
Jerome, you go next.
So Damian,
Jerome.
let me ask you this, brother. So
There we go.
If you're working on, let's say, external, for example, so you're working on your business, you're working at the same time, you're working on wealth,
Yeah.
and then internal, you're working on spirituality, for example.
Yeah.
Now, let's say 3 months into you working on these three different challenges,
Yeah.
you meet someone. So now you have to go back to external. Now you're working on love. Do you drop one? Because you said you can't work all 12 or at one time. It's overwhelming. So how do you balance this? Answer that for me, brother. This is good stuff.
That's a great question. So yeah, you're not going to work on all 12, but if you're working on those three and you meet someone and you want to add love into the mix, you just need to be mindful that you're now working on four. Right? And be mindful that your attention is going to be split. Now you could choose to drop one at that time, and when I say drop it, you could choose to. Sorry, one sec. Just needed to send my daughter off to voicemail. You could choose to postpone one, or you could continue with four. You got to feel that out yourself. I think the most important thing is just recognizing that you can't take on all 12 areas at the same time, because that just is too overwhelming. Sometimes I think people just think, I'm going to go fix it all, and then nothing gets handled. Right. So focus. 3 is a really good number we've discovered in this kind of work. You can get your mind and your attention wrapped around 3 things. If the 4th came along, you don't have to drop it, but 3 is a good number to start and focus on those, take some steps with those, make a difference, and then reevaluate a few months in and see what's next.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Brother Taylor, we haven't seen you in a while. Welcome.
Hey guys, how y'all doing? Glad to see y'all too. Glad to be here. Well, my thing was about dealing and existing in your presence at present time.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of us, we've kind of up in the years, and we have experiences, we have responsibilities, we have careers, and we have family, and we have extended family, and it pulls on you a lot. So then it kind of like makes you not in the present. You're always dealing with, all the other tentacles of your life. And it's kind of strange, because when you retire, which I did, then you take on more things. Seems like you're taking on more things to fulfill that gap of being trained to work, get up every morning. And so I really try to focus on me in the present. And that becomes a challenge sometimes.
Damian, before you respond to that, it might be good for you to see how many of us are retired on this call. Can I see the hands of those that are retired, all the retirees? Come on, brothers, all the retirees on this call.
Let me see. All right. Okay, good. Oh, there's another one. All right. So let me respond to that question. So first of all, you had a long list. You had, family and all these other things that show up. When are those distractions happening? In the past, in the present, or in your future?
That's interesting. Some are in the past.
Yes.
And
Present.
Future.
No, they're not happening. They're not happening. None of them.
I'm projecting to the future, rather.
Yeah, you think they're going to happen in the future. None of them happened yet in the future.
So then go back to the present.
Yeah. Right. So they either happen in the past, or they're happening right now in the present.
Right.
Anything that you think is going to happen in the future is just a thought that you have that it could happen in the future. So there's nothing to deal with yet in the future. So the things that happen in the past, what can you do to change them?
Nothing.
Exactly. So then that all that leaves you with is what's happening right now in the present.
And that's where I have problems staying.
Yeah, we all do. We all
Nah,
do.
for real, that's a very
Yeah.
difficult task to
Yes.
stay within your present environment and be present.
Yeah.
So-
Why do you think those monks up on, like those Buddhist monks spend like the years and years they spend meditating and away? It is a practice that all of us as human beings deal with. It's a challenge for us to stay in the present because our mind is automatically pushing us back to the past. Like, oh, well, my wife, I'll just retirees. If my wife or my kids or whatever, they said blah, 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 blah yesterday. Now I'm gonna, now you got all the thoughts going on about what they said yesterday, blah, 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 blah. That's going to influence me right now in my day. No, they said that yesterday. Do you have to deal with any of that right now? It's done. Right?
Mhm.
Now, if they're talking to you on the phone right now and they're saying it, that's something to deal with. You're in the present. You're living in the moment with them.
But
If they
Damian,
said something yesterday, you're gonna think maybe they're gonna say something tomorrow. Well, deal with it tomorrow when it shows up in the present.
But Damian, like having older kids, and you see that, for example, that they are not using their money wisely, right?
Yes.
These conversations. So personally, this is me, I project into the future that I'm looking at my bank account and my money is saying like, wait a minute, they're making some choices that's going to affect me in the future.
Yeah, it's good, Mike. But when are they making those choices?
They're making it now.
Yeah, so deal with it now.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna deal with it now because I'm thinking about the future.
Yeah, so you're there's nothing wrong with, look, you guys, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with anticipating the future, just as long as you get that the future is just a likely outcome of circumstances and you can't be sure. So many of us live like we know how the future is going to go.
Right.
How many of us live like I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
We just assume like we're going to wake up tomorrow morning, right? We don't know that. That's a likely we're going to wake up tomorrow morning, but we don't live today like maybe we won't wake up tomorrow morning. Maybe today's the last day we have to do what we're doing right now. So we don't live in the moment, making the most of the moment. So yeah, look, if your kids are spending like idiots, that's happening right now. Deal with it right now. Because yeah, you're right. They keep doing that in the future. It's likely they're going to drain your bank account. Right?
So
That's
I get what you're saying. So we shouldn't be busy writing scripts and trying to predict the future and live in the future. Let's live in the present. I get what you're saying. We have two questions, Leon, and then Noah. Leon.
Hey, how you doing, fellas? Thank you, Uncle Mike. You know what? I've been listening. I caught the tail end of what you were saying, Damian. But from the brother's question, I kind of got the gist of what's going on. It seems like, I don't know. It seems like as Black men, from what has happened historically, we're so worried about the future and how we can affect that now. And we just can't. Uncle Mike spoke about it just slipped my mind, but I know Brother Jerome was talking about the external and the internal. Oh, and Brother Mike was talking, Uncle Mike was talking about, as Black men, we have a lot of these forces just around us. And I was kind of thinking about, how do you navigate social responsibility with this moral responsibility that we have? Like sometimes we have to choose between the two, and we have to deal with those choices. And you kind of probably answered it in the last question, like it's up to us, but how do we make that decision knowing that in the future we're going to lay our heads on our beds comfortably, in choosing something that moral or socially correct? I don't know if I can give you an example, But I don't know, like if I know that one of my coworkers is doing something, it has a secret, right? I know the secret of this coworker. My moral responsibility is to keep the trust. But divulging this secret might be the better good for the kids, let's say, because I work in the school. How do I navigate something like that? Or somebody working for a company that they know is not environmentally good, but they work there because they live more comfortably because of the pay. You understand what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I
How
do,
do you
I
make a
do.
choice like that? Or
Yeah,
how do you navigate those choices?
yeah, I get the question. I'm gonna answer the question in a broad way, Leon. Um, I don't like either or scenarios. I like and scenarios. So I would start asking myself the question, how do I make the moral and social choice, and start looking from there? And it becomes, but I do think that the crux to your question sort of revolves around your values. Like
Right.
if you can choose a path that aligns with your values and you can live with that, then that's the answer.
Hmm.
And I know we're not talking about a specific scenario. You gave an example in the school, like how can you choose to, is keeping the secret really the right thing to do? Like what's the right moral and right social choice for you such that you can live with your values and your choices and what is right for you? That's where I would look for that in general,
Okay.
if that helps answer the question.
To try to find a sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah. I I I don't like ors as just as a rule of life. People are like, choose this or that. I'm like, well, it's like people are like, choose a chocolate cone or a vanilla cone. No, I will take the swirl. Thank you very much.
Mm.
It sounds ideal, but sometimes we don't have that choice.
Sometimes we
Sometimes
don't.
we have to choose the or,
Yes,
this or that.
yes. But I'll choose the or after I've looked for the and.
Mm.
Okay,
Only
Mm.
after.
got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
brother.
Noah.
Yeah, I just learned something that that was real. It's simple, but like my wife will bring up something in my immediate past. My present response will be like, "Stop bringing up old shit," which would affect my immediate future very poorly. So now I know it's about choice. I mean, thank you for this because that just reminded me of like that right there, would just kind of keep me grounded, man. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was sharing with you that I spent the weekend in a course this past weekend, right? And I'll tell you something about the arguments with the significant other that I learned this weekend that would have saved me a ton of time. It was a conversation called a structural conversation. So a structural conversation is something that we do physically, something that we do with our bodies, right? So like if it's relationship between me and an object, and the statement was made or the inquiry was made that often the solution to many of our problems is a structural response. And so I started thinking about this, and I remembered I have an ex, and we would have the same scenario play out over and over and over again. And here's how it would go. It would be late at night, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we're having a disagreement over something. And I'm saying to her, if we keep having this conversation, I'm going to say something that I don't mean because I'm tired and I want to go to bed and I want to continue this conversation tomorrow. So can we please just pause this so we can talk about it later? And her response is, I'm not going to bed that about something. We need to get this resolved before we go to bed. And this would just go back and forth. I'm like, I would get more and more aggravated. And the thing that I got in this conversation was structural. I said, you mean I could have ended all that if I had just walked up to her and hugged her? a structural action. Forget the conversation, just hug her. So I offer you that in those conversations with your wife. There may be a structural answer to those disagreements that you can just take an action that ends all that back and forth conversation. Because all that conversation is just talking about the past or like you could just interrupt it.
I received that fully, man. I received that fully. Yes. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Mike, you're muted, brother.
So Noah, I'm going to put something on our WhatsApp group, the power of a hug. It's going to be for you, but everyone will cash in on it. Joaquin.
Oh man, thank everyone, and thank you, Damian. And it's amazing, you were talking about presence and the mind, and it's something I've been practicing is to observe the mind, and in practicing it, I'm learning how it works.
Yeah.
I'm learning that it resists presence. It always wants to take me to the past or to the future.
Yeah.
But it resists being present. So my practice and my awareness now is that when it takes me or creates these stories, is to just observe it.
Yeah.
And not attach myself to it.
Powerful.
And let that stuff go through me.
Yeah.
And once you start learning that your mind, like for me, is not me, it's a tool I have. And observing it, it has a lot of crazy stories. And so I just observe it. Like
Yeah.
I sit in the seat of consciousness and observe it. And it saves me so much energy for when I want to do something in the present.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could use the past only if it's helping me in the present. Other than that, I don't want the stories. I'll just listen to them, observe them, and forget about the future because I don't want those stories either. I want to stay present in what's happening right now. And that has relieved so much anxiety and gives me so much peace. And so I just want to say that, that's being present is a practice. And I've been practicing and practicing, and I keep practicing. The stories still come. I was with my family this weekend. I had stories. My son, oh, he needs to do this. This one needs. I'm like, come on, man, stop. I want to take a Epsom salt bath. Let that stuff go. Yeah, and let it go.
Yeah.
I don't need to create stories about other people, especially my family, because I think I know what's going to happen to them in the future. But no, it's not true.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Knowing. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and that piece that you said right at the end, that's the danger, right? The danger is taking that story that you have from the past and then you project it into the future. And if you don't catch yourself projecting it into the future, you will interact with those people in your life like that story that you projected into the future is true. And they haven't actually done that. You just created that. And then here's the wacky part. Your brain will go find evidence to prove that what you put into the future is true. It's just a vicious cycle. There's a stat, I never remember the exact number, but it's one of these I'm always fascinated with neuroscience because our brain is an incredible thing. There's a stat, if you just to understand the way the mechanism of the brain. So about 90% of what you are seeing right now is not real, right? Your brain is filling in 90% of what you see on the screen. What's actually coming into your optic nerves and your receptors is about 10% of the screen, and your brain's filling in the rest. Now take that into your life. You literally are seeing like 10% of what's real, and 90% is being filled in by your past. We don't even see like what we think is like we're seeing. We're not seeing. You can just try it. Just look at one spot on the screen and watch your brain fill it. Well, maybe it's. I've now tried to train myself to recognize it. I can start to see It's like, no, I'm not actually seeing that. I'm just seeing that Adisa is up in that corner because my brain knows that Adisa is up in that corner. So it's filled in Adisa up in that corner. Really what I was looking at was Noah, but I like Adisa's still up there. I'm not really looking at him.
Heavy stuff here. Brother Taylor has a question or a comment.
Yes, Brother Taylor.
Yeah, one of the things I find that helps me stay present is exercising. Don't ask me why, but it just generates it gives me a lot of feeling being present. And one of the tools I use to alleviate a lot of anxiety is writing down stuff for the next day.
Yep.
Make a list.
Yep.
And you look at that list at the end of the day, and even though it seems overwhelming when you think about it, but when you do the list in present and you exist in your presence, it goes away. So it's like I accomplished everything I wanted to do in that day in a half the time I thought it would take.
Yeah. Yeah, that exercise thing, like if I find for myself when I exercise, I have a lot of thoughts about the past. So if I want to stay present to my exercise, I focus on my breathing. That's now.
Well, one of the things that I like to do, I don't know about other people, but I like to listen to my oldies when I'm exercising. It may hurt me one day because I think I'm 17 years old when I'm feeling this music and I'm running. It may be my death, but it really gives me that energy, and I like listening to it. But I do switch it up so it ain't all old music. It's present music, past music, but it does give me that energy that I need to stay focused and do what I want to do.
Now
Especially running. Yeah.
Now I don't feel so bad that I listen to my oldies when I'm working out.
So
you can hurt yourself, though. Be careful. Don't think you're 16 because you're not.
So,
Damian, this has been incredible. This has been an incredible conversation. Some of the brothers maybe have something they want to say that didn't get a chance. Dwayne, Ron,
PD,
Moore, Marcus, any of you brothers that didn't get a chance to make a comment, I just want to give you guys an opportunity. Doug?
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you, Damian. What you point out is very, very, important for all people on the planet, believe it or not. And definitely, I'm going to take some of what you said and go with it in terms of prioritizing and then step into the priority, and then from 1 to whatever, 5, 6, 7, whatever.
Yeah.
And start hammering a lot of things out that, I want to get accomplished and stuff like that. But when you were speaking and everybody was, talking and collaborating, what's weird, I went to see the movie Flash. I'm not going to be a spoiler. Everybody see that movie and it's going to sound like exactly what you're talking about right here, right now. It's incredible to the T.
Okay. All
to
right.
the T.
And that's Flash?
Flash.
The new movie
Okay,
Flash.
let me check it out. Thanks, Brother Doug. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Dwayne, Ron, Brother Moore.
Yeah, I'd also just say thank you for that perspective. You just really formed a lot of thoughts in my head, and I'll deal with them presently to try to navigate. But just absolutely very interesting and intriguing perspective, and I appreciate it. I think it'll be very beneficial to implement some of what you said.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron. Anyone else want to sign off by saying what they're grateful for or one takeaway, something that they're going to be able to implement?
I'll do one real quick. Dwayne, hey brothers. Just always a good refresher, good reminder. Brothers taught me a good bit of this, so I like to hear it. Takeaway is, the takeaway for me is just to remember every day how important I am, right? And to make time for that, because everything else will fall apart if I don't.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well said, Dwayne. Thank you. Marcus? All right. All right. Damian, we want to thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We end at 8:30. pretty much. So if anyone wants to just give a takeaway, something you're grateful for as we close out, this is your opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. Can you brothers hear me?
Yes, definitely.
Brother Damian, you messed me up, man. You messed me up, man. When you said you own 10% of what you, 90% of what you see is not real and 10% is. So that guy's not going in that girl's pocketbook. You know, that's what my eyes see. You're telling me that 10% of that is true and 90% is not. That's good stuff, man. But you messed my head up with that, brother. Yeah.
Damian, I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing your life story. I mean, it just gave so much weight to the conversation that you're not just talking from the book, you're talking from your personal experience of working in the corporate world and was able to make a 180-degree turn and with your mental health and physical health, and that you're practicing what you preach. So really appreciate you. And thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
So we want to thank you. Anyone else want something else as we close out? Some last words, a question for Damian before we close out. I'm definitely going to post some information on our WhatsApp group.
Well, mine is not a question to the brother. I just want you brothers to take that link down. I think it's very important. And that's the link related to blood type.
Okay.
But I also have something for my brother Jerome, and I think brother Doug is still on. Can I put it in that everyone?
Yes.
And they should be able to. All right, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, appreciate
I think
that.
it's really important for all of us, particularly the well, the blood type thing is for all of us. The other stuff is specifically related to brother Doug and Jerome. I'm a diabetic, so I have my own thing that I have to follow.
That's
so
great.
Let me see if I could just put it in the copy it to the everyone right now.
Great, appreciate that, Disha.
Yeah, because so okay, I'm gonna you're gonna see everyone again, brother Jerome and brother Doug. Okay, I'm gonna send it now. Let's see, I think both of them appeared.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they both appeared.
Great.
And they'll have your names on it. Please check it. You know, everything.
Will do.
All right, brother. Okay, bro.
All right, thank you. One thing I definitely want to mention, you know, Damian, I've heard it before. It was a great reminder, the importance of staying in the present. You know, the past I cannot change, and I'm not in the position to write the narrative of the future. And what I can do is this moment that I have. And by trying to live in the future, I can miss what's happening this moment and what I need to do. And I'm going to focus on the choices I make. One thing I wrote down, you said, write down something, a change that you're going to make. I need to say it out loud. I used to do, my coach my trainer, physical trainer, gave me some mobility strength exercise that I was supposed to be doing. I stopped. I've been off the wagon. And I'm just going to do better. I'm going to do it. But do my mobility exercise tonight. And Ishmael, you have the final words.
Okay, what I learned from today was that you can't worry about the past. You can plan for the future, but there's no guarantee. But the most important thing is progression. That whether if it's 1%, 5%, or 10%, don't always try to look for the 100% improvement, progression. Just take them in increments. And so that's the one thing I learned from today is take progression in small increments. And over time, when you look, you're like, wow, I did that. So again, that's the one thing I learned is just just live in the present and take progressions in small increments.
Those wonderful summary there. Wonderful insight, Ishmael, as always. Thank you. Thank you. So once again, Damian, do you have any final words you want to say to us as we close out, something that you want to emphasize?
No, just thank you for having me. It's always great to be a part of groups like this that are empowering other men of color. And I will say, I will give an endorsement for Adisa's blood type diet thing. I did that years and years ago, and that's how I discovered that I feel sluggish when I eat wheat, because in the blood type, it says that my blood type, I shouldn't be eating wheat products. And then I started paying attention, and I started feeling sluggish around it. So there is something to it, and I've done that diet before.
Yep.
Well, Damian,
Cut
thank you.
your mother some cake.
And I want you to know, once you come to these meetings, you're family. So you're always welcome back. I mean, we look forward to you dropping on us. And thank you. Thank you, brothers. It's always great
Thank
to
you, Damian.
time together.
Thank you, Damian.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
for caring, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Have
All
a
right,
good
brothers.
night.
Love you, brothers.
Love you too.
Take care,
All right.
guys.
Love y'all too, brothers.
Good night.
You well, gentlemen.
Good night.